In the year 2000, three men walked into a meeting that could have made them the most powerful people in entertainment. They walked out having made one of the worst decisions in the history of American business. The company sitting across the table from them was small. It was losing money. It had a strange little idea about mailing DVDs to people's homes in red envelopes, and its founders had flown to Dallas with a simple offer. Buy us. Take all of it. $50 million. The executives at Blockbuster, a company with 9,000 stores and billions of dollars in revenue, didn't just say no. According to the people in that room, they had to try not to laugh. That company they laughed at was called Netflix. Today, it's worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And Blockbuster has exactly one store left on the entire planet. This is the story of how the biggest name in movie rental talked itself into extinction, how a company that owned the future handed it to a stranger for free, and how a single word, no, turned an $8 billion empire into a punchline. To understand how something this big could fall this hard, you have to go back to the beginning, because Blockbuster didn't stumble into failure by accident. It was built, brick by brick, into something that looked completely unstoppable. It starts in 1985 in Dallas, Texas, with a man named David Cook. Cook wasn't a movie guy. He ran a software company that built database systems for the oil industry. Unglamorous, complicated work about tracking huge amounts of inventory. But when the oil market crashed, Cook needed a new business, and his wife Sandy had an idea: video rental. Now, in the mid-1980s, the typical video store was a nightmare. It was small. It was dingy. It had maybe a few hundred tapes, half of them out of stock, organized by no logic at all. And very often there was a curtained-off room in the back that no family wanted to walk past. Cook looked at that mess and saw something nobody else did. He saw a database problem. So he built the first Blockbuster around technology. Every tape had a barcode. Every customer had a scannable membership card. A computer tracked what rented and what didn't in every store and told each location exactly which movies to stock based on the neighborhood around it. The stores were huge, bright, painted blue and yellow, open late, and completely family-friendly. Thousands of titles, no curtain in the back. The first store opened in October 1985. It was a sensation. People had never seen anything like it. And then a much bigger predator smelled the blood in the water. His name was Wayne Huizenga. Huizenga had already built one empire. He turned a single garbage truck into Waste Management, one of the largest companies in America. He knew exactly what a cash machine looked like, and when he walked into a Blockbuster, that's what he saw. In 1987, he took control. What happened next was one of the most aggressive expansions in retail history. At its peak, Blockbuster was opening a brand new store roughly every single day. It swallowed its competitors whole. It went national. Then it went global. If you were alive in the 1990s, Blockbuster Night wasn't a marketing slogan. It was a ritual. Friday evening, the whole family in the car, walking those blue-carpeted aisles, arguing over which movie to bring home. By 1994, Blockbuster was the undisputed king. And that year, Huizenga sold it to Sumner Redstone's Viacom for about $8.4 billion. Cash, the media giant, desperately wanted to help win a war for control of Paramount. That's how valuable Blockbuster was. It was the crown jewel, the cash cow other empires were built on top of. Everything was perfect, except for one thing, and it's the same thing that would eventually kill them. Because Blockbuster's money machine had a dirty little secret. A huge chunk of its profit didn't come from renting you movies. It came from punishing you for bringing them back late. Late fees. At their peak, late fees brought Blockbuster somewhere around $800 million a year. Not a rounding error, a pillar of the entire business. The company had quietly become addicted to the single thing its customers hated most about it. Ask anyone who lived through it. The rush to return a tape before midnight. The sinking feeling of a $5 movie that somehow cost you $20. That resentment was real, and it was building, like a crack running quietly through the foundation of a skyscraper. For years, it didn't matter. There was nowhere else to go. And then the world started to change underneath their feet. DVDs arrived. Small, light, cheap to ship. The internet arrived. And for the first time it became possible to imagine a movie company with no stores at all, no buildings, no blue carpet, and, this is the part that mattered, no late fees, which brings us to two men in California and a company built to be the exact opposite of everything Blockbuster was. In 1997, Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph founded Netflix. The famous origin story is that Hastings once got hit with a $40 late fee on a copy of Apollo 13 and walked away furious, thinking there had to be a better way. Whether that story is exactly true or not, it captures the whole idea perfectly. Netflix would mail you DVDs. Then it went further. A flat monthly subscription. Keep the movies as long as you want. No due dates. No late fees. Ever. It was, quite literally, the anti-Blockbuster. It was designed to attack the exact weakness Blockbuster had built its profits on. There was just one problem for Netflix. In its early years, it was tiny, and it was bleeding money. When the dot-com bubble burst in 2000, a small, unprofitable internet company mailing DVDs looked like it might not survive at all. So Hastings and Randolph did the logical thing. They went to the giant. They flew to Dallas to make a deal. Picture the room. On one side, Netflix, a money-losing startup running out of runway. On the other, Blockbuster, 9,000 stores, tens of thousands of employees, a household name in a dozen countries. The Netflix founders made their pitch. Let us run your online business. Better yet, buy us outright. $50 million. And Blockbuster's leadership passed. Now, here's what I want you to understand, because it's the most important part of this entire story. That no was not insane. In that room, in that year, it looked reasonable. Netflix was small. Netflix was losing money. The internet was in freefall. Blockbuster was printing cash from physical stores that were packed every Friday night. From where they sat, buying a struggling dot-com that mailed DVDs sounded like paying $50 million for a problem. That's what makes it a tragedy instead of just a mistake. It wasn't stupidity. It was a smart-sounding decision, made by successful people that happened to be catastrophically wrong. In that meeting, the future split into two roads, and Blockbuster confidently drove down the wrong one. For a while, nothing seemed to happen. Netflix survived the crash. It went public in 2002. Its subscriber numbers started to climb, slowly, then faster, and to Blockbuster's credit, they eventually woke up. This is the part most people forget. Blockbuster didn't just sit there and do nothing. In 2004, it launched Blockbuster Online to fight Netflix directly. In 2005, it did something dramatic. It announced the end of late fees, trying to rip out the one thing customers hated. And then, in 2006, it launched a program called Total Access. And Total Access was brilliant. It let you order DVDs online and then return them to a physical store to swap for another one instantly. Netflix couldn't match that. It had no stores. Here's the twist. Nobody XP. It was working. Total Access was pulling subscribers away from Netflix so fast that inside Netflix there was real fear. For a brief moment, Blockbuster, the dinosaur, was actually winning the future. And then Blockbuster did the thing that truly killed it. It turned on itself. Because winning the future was expensive, killing late fees cost the company hundreds of millions in lost profit. Total Access cost money to run. The CEO driving this fight, John Antioco, believed it was the only way to survive. But not everyone agreed. An activist investor named Carl Icahn bought a big stake, won a battle for seats on the board, and looked at the enormous cost of Antioco's strategy with horror. The two men clashed hard, and in 2007, after a fight that came down partly to a dispute over a bonus, Antioco was pushed out. His replacement reversed course. The company pulled back on Total Access, dialed down the war with Netflix, and refocused on its stores. It took its foot off the throat of the one competitor it had actually been beating, and Netflix, given room to breathe, sprinted ahead, straight into streaming, the technology that would end physical video rental forever. Meanwhile, Blockbuster was carrying a weight it couldn't shake. When Viacom finally cut it loose in 2004, it spun the company off loaded with around $1 billion in debt. So at the exact moment Blockbuster needed to spend freely to reinvent itself, it was chained to enormous interest payments. It couldn't outspend Netflix. It couldn't afford to lose money to win. Every option that might have saved it cost money it no longer had. Then came the squeeze from both sides. On one end, Redbox and its $1 kiosks undercut Blockbuster on price. On the other, Netflix streaming made the trip to the store pointless. The Friday night ritual, the whole reason Blockbuster existed, quietly died in millions of living rooms. In September 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy, buried under nearly $1 billion in debt. In 2011, the satellite company Dish Network bought what was left of it at auction, the brand, the stores, the pieces, for about $320 million. To put that in perspective, a company sold for $8.4 billion in 1994 was worth a fraction of that just 17 years later. And then the lights started going out, store by store, city by city. By 2014, the last of the company-owned stores in America had closed. Today there is one Blockbuster left. One. A single franchise store in Bend, Oregon. It survives not really as a video store, but as a shrine, a place people drive to, so they can stand in the blue and yellow aisles one more time and feel nostalgic for a company that no longer exists. So let's go back to that room in Dallas. $50 million, that's the number. That's what Netflix cost in the year 2000. Carl Icahn, the investor who fought over Blockbuster's future, later called it one of the worst investments of his entire life. And Reed Hastings, the man they couldn't be bothered to buy, took that hectic little company and built it into a business worth thousands of times what Blockbuster could have paid. But here's the real lesson, and it's darker and more useful than they should have bought Netflix. Blockbuster didn't die because it was dumb. It died because it was successful. It was so dominant that it couldn't imagine the thing that would destroy it. It was so addicted to the profits from late fees that it protected them right up until they were worthless. And it was so buried in debt that by the time it finally understood the danger, it had already lost the ability to move. It had everything. The brand, the stores, the customers, the money, and it still lost. Because when the moment came, it chose to defend the empire it already had, instead of paying for the empire it could have become. The next Blockbuster is out there right now, a giant so large it's certain it can't fall. They always are. This has been liquidated. If you want to watch more empires fall, subscribe. We release a new collapse every week.